Hello everyone and welcome to this behind the scenes of the Mooncrest Mansion. We're gonna do a complete lightson ride-through and I'm just gonna zoom in on certain aspects. So let's get it started. I know it's not really noticeable, but as you can see here, the door really moves back and forth like there's something behind it. The lighting in the actual ride makes it a little bit hard to see, but I think it still works. Now that the lights are on, you can see that the bright silhouette just pops up out of nowhere. But because of the lighting in the actual ride, it's not as obvious as it is now. The opening staircase is definitely something inspired by the ride Symbolica in the Efteling. Some of you already pointed that out, and you would be correct. Now, this is something I really want to zoom in. The elevator was a very fun thing to do. We're gonna just take a look at it outside of the ride. And as you can see, the walls are moving, but they're only moving in a dimension of 8 meters by 8 meters. But because I cut it up into segments, I could actually move every segment individually, creating a continuous movement. Something else you notice now that the lights are on is when the elevator reaches the top. You can see small black cubes hiding the lights. Now, as you might know, Planet Coaster lights, even when they are off, the light itself is lit. And because we're not actually moving upward, those lights might give the illusion away. The ride consists of about 75 custom-made items, and a lot of them are already released. But I will cover all of them in a separate video, so I will not be discussing all of the items now. Now that you can clearly see the carpet, you can also see that it's moving. That is something that's really hard to see in the actual ride. And to be fair, it's also not really that important. But when I was creating this item, I also wanted to add a little animation to it. So when people use it, they can either use it as a static prop or use the animation instead. Something I really enjoyed in this hallway scene is that just by tilting the cart a little bit and having not a lot of light, it makes the hallway look like it's tilting a little bit. So it turns out I don't always have to rotate the room to make that happen. Now the piano scene, you can see that I use a couple of items to hide the lights again, to really isolate the piano. I'm also using the pop-up wall to close off the hallway. By doing that, the piano comes to complete focus of the scene. For the television scene, I also used the black cubes again, once again to hide the lights. This way the television becomes the complete focus of the scene. And by lighting it in a certain way, I could still use the same ghost silhouette. I didn't want to create a different variation of every prop for every scene. Although to be fair, in the end I do have two different ghost pop-ups. One of 1 second long and one of 5 seconds long, because the scene with the television and, for example, the scene you're about to see where the girl pops up for like a second, it was impossible to do with the same ghost. For the toys, I wanted to have the feeling of a little bit of an behind-the-wall alternate plane of existence, if you will. I wanted them to make it feel like there were different islands with nothing in between. So it's like the ghost girl pulled you into her world. I really liked the way the card with the teddy bear turned out. It took a while to create it, but I think it was worth it. Especially the slow turning of the head. Now the Jack in the Box was already released, but it fitted perfectly with all the other toys. So that was great. Now this scene is another one where I used the little black box once again to create the focus really on the painting, or actually on the door inside the painting. And here I used the pop-up wall to enlarge and shrink the room to the size that I wanted it to be. I also decided to mute every sound when the door is in place. This is to increase the effect of the creaking of the door and the effect of the scene itself. Building the library was a lot of work, but I'm very happy with the end result. It feels even bigger than it actually is, because the darkness near the top might actually suggest that it's even higher than it actually is. The smoke behind the ghost is something I want to zoom in on. It might look like it's a very simple thing, but something I noticed is when you completely cover a ride in terrain, the smoke is not something that's actually visible. Now luckily I found a solution for that. What you see here is there's actually a hole in the terrain, so the moonlight can go through. However, to not have the moonlight actually hit anything but the smoke, there's a large black plane to stop the light. I have no idea how it works, but the end result is that you can actually see the smoke without lighting up the rest of the ride or the building around it. The smoke trail was obviously trigger hell, but the end result was really great, so I really wanted to do it anyway. Even though the first part of the trail is probably not even noticeable in the ride. Another thing that people might have noticed is that when the lamp is falling, the light is also going down. Now obviously there is not a moving light in Planet Coaster, but as you can see here, what I did was have multiple colorful lights on top of each other and turn them on and off real quick right after each other. That combined with the falling prop simulates a light falling down and crashing on the floor. That quick spin was because I wanted to rotate the cart even further than it actually could, so I had to reset the movement, but because it was completely black you don't notice it. I was really happy with the painting doorway, and if you want to use it you can go through the left side or the right side of the painting. Both sides are large enough to let it ride through. Rotating hallway consists of several hallway segments right after each other and triggered right after each other. And that in combination with the movement and tilting of the car, you get a real sense of disorientation. And combine that with the colors and the music, you get some weird trippy hallucination. This may be my favorite scene of the whole ride. The contrast between the first part and the second part, where all hell breaks loose, is something I really enjoyed. I have to say that I was able to find the perfect scream as well. This is not something I always have control over, because you just have to find the right sound. The water works for this scene. When you put this water in daylight, you can see that it's colorable and it can have a variety of uses. And I would love to see what you make with it. Someone asked me how I got the cart to stop and then go backward again. I didn't. As you can see here, I just go through the wall, make it go dark, and with the sound effects of a stopping cart, I simulate that it stops and then goes backward again, but it just turns around 180 degrees and continues on its path. The movie projection was kind of tricky. I had to find a way to create a video without actually using a video. To explain it fully, we're gonna take a little sidestep into Blender. What I eventually went for was a static plane. That's the one you see here, and that's the one of the creepy forest. And I had about 10 frames, if I'm correct, 11 frames, which then can simulate the actual movie by playing them in order very fast. And that's what you see over here. I did that by alternating between those 11 frames, which then simulates a movie. You can probably see it better here. You can see that the frames are moving, and that's for every frame in there. And in the end, a movie is just a lot of pictures right after each other. And that's exactly what I did. To simulate a little bit more movement, I split the static and the rest of the images for now. As you can see, it vibrates a bit, and in the middle there's a little bit of movement because I'm moving these vertices, and by moving them, as you can see, just a little bit, just slightly, you create a little bit of movement, and that's just what it needed. And finally, the card also had to move through the picture without showing the picture. That's why in the end it flips around. And because Planet Coasters by default uses backface culling, which means that if you have a plane like this, you can't see the other side. So by flipping it around, the card can just go through it without you noticing that you actually go through the movie projection. I will also show you in Planet Coaster. Here you can see that the card moves through the projection, but when you're inside the card you don't see it because you only see the backside of the projection. When the painting turns back into a hallway, I did that by having all the white panels completely black out, and then have the pop-up wall, and I also have a pop-up floor and a pop-up ceiling, and when they all pop up, then it envelops the car and you're in the hallway again, as you can see here. For the elevator going down, I basically did the same trick as up, with the exception of that I wanted to hide the track. So the little flicker at the end, right before you reach the bottom, is just something to hide the track, because you would see it otherwise. That is something you can notice now the lights are on. Having the werewolf stalk around you and walk around you, that's something that was mainly achieved by sound, with the exception of the bushes left and right that move. Those are props that are part of the petrifying pack. But I think that a lot of creators forget how important sound is, and I think that this scene really illustrates why it is important, and definitely when you're doing horror. So please do take your time to find the right sounds and right music, because it will really take your creation to the next level. I can't stress that enough. I used a bit of smoke here to have the transition from completely black to the black panels a little less harsh. I needed the black panels because I wanted to engulf the rider in a complete red light to simulate death. As an added bonus, I could also fade out the color again. It gives us the final image of death finally taking you. Which then ends in 2 pop-up walls, sealing off the image. And I think that illustrates how versatile that item is. You can use it to change the size of rooms, but you can also use it to just hide stuff. Alright, well that brings us to the end of the video. If there is something that I haven't explained yet that you still want to have explained, please leave a comment down below. And don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video. See ya!